Welcome, basketball aficionados, passionate supporters of the Philippine national team, and fans of international hoops all around the globe. You are tuning into what might just be the most pivotal, monumental, and defining deep dive we have ever conducted on this channel regarding the future, the present, and the absolute sheer depth of Gilas Pilipinas. Today, we are unpacking a breaking narrative, a headline that has sent shockwaves through the basketball community, yet simultaneously ignited a fire of undeniable pride among the Filipino fanbase. The headline reads, FIBA strengthened Gilas player option, and incredibly, even with absolutely no B-League and no KBL boys available, this Philippine squad remains absolutely, positively, and terrifyingly loaded. Let that sink in for a moment, because to truly understand the magnitude of this statement, we must first confront the reality of the international basketball landscape and the unique situation the Philippines finds itself in. For the past few years, the narrative surrounding Philippine basketball has been heavily dominated by the Great Exodus. We have watched with immense pride as the brightest, most athletic, and most promising homegrown talents took their elite skills overseas. We saw the undeniable rise of Filipino imports conquering the Japan B-League. We witnessed the aerial acrobatics and defensive tenacity of our boys taking over the Korean Basketball League, or the KBL. Names like Dwight Ramos, the undeniable stabilizing force of the national team, Kai Sato, our towering beacon of hope in the paint, 30 Ravina, the pioneer who broke the ceiling in Japan, Ren Zabando, the high-flying human highlight reel in Korea, Carl Tamayo, the bruising, versatile forward, and Kevin Kiambao, the modern point forward marvel. These names have become entirely synonymous with the new era of Gilas Pilipinas. They have been the pillars upon which recent international campaigns were heavily built. So, when the news drops that due to grueling overseas league schedules, devastating FIBA window conflicts, and the sheer logistical impossibility of flying these international stars back home for an intensive training camp, Gilas Pilipinas might have to march into battle without them, the initial reaction from the casual observer is sheer panic. The international media might look at this absence and immediately write off the Philippine squad, assuming that a team stripped of its celebrated overseas contingent is a team fundamentally compromised. They look at the missing firepower, the missing length, the missing international experience, and they calculate a massive deficit. But that is precisely where they are wrong. That is exactly where the casual narrative completely misunderstands the profound, bottomless well of basketball talent that resides within the Philippine archipelago. The breaking news we are dissecting today is not a story of depletion. It is a story of unprecedented reinforcement. It is a revelation of tactical depth, systemic resilience, and a massive structural victory off the court that changes the entire geometry of Philippine basketball. Recently, the International Basketball Federation, commonly known as FIBA, made a monumental adjustment to its eligibility rules, a change that fundamentally alters the landscape for nations with massive diaspora communities, exactly like the Philippines. After years of relentless lobbying, strategic negotiations, and presenting undeniable demographic realities, the rule regarding passport acquisition for local player status has been significantly loosened. Previously, the strict, heavily debated rule mandated that a player must have acquired their domestic passport before the age of 16 to be considered a local, unrestricted player. This single arbitrary age limit broke the hearts of countless talented players of Filipino heritage born overseas, restricting them to the single, highly contested naturalized player spot. But now, in a watershed moment for international basketball equity, FIBA has officially raised that passport age requirement from 16 to 18 years old. This is not just a minor clerical update, this is a seismic shift. This is an absolute game-changer of the highest order. By pushing the deadline back by 2 crucial years, FIBA has essentially unlocked a vault of elite, highly trained, passionately Filipino basketball players who obtained their passports in their late teens. Players who were once handcuffed by technicalities, previously relegated to the sidelines or forced to battle for that solitary naturalized slot, are now immediately eligible to proudly don the national colors as pure, unrestricted locals. We are talking about a massive influx of size, shooting, athleticism, and high-level basketball IQ suddenly flooding the Gilas Pilipinas talent pool. Combine this massive administrative victory with the undeniable, battle-tested, championship pedigree core of the Philippine Basketball Association, the PBA, and you begin to see why this roster is terrifyingly deep. When the overseas boys cannot answer the call, the PBA vanguard steps into the spotlight, not as backups, but as prime, absolute alpha competitors who have been waiting for their moment to defend the home floor. You add into this mix a naturalized player program that remains the absolute gold standard in Asian basketball, headlined by men who do not just play for the paycheck, but who bleed the national colors and embrace the culture with every fiber of their being. We are looking at a Gilas Pilipinas squad that can confidently field a starting five capable of going toe-to-toe with the titans of Oceania, the heavyweights of the Middle East, and the absolute best that East Asia has to offer, all without a single player needing to board a plane from Tokyo or Seoul. This intro is just scratching the surface of a beautifully complex, incredibly rich basketball tapestry. We are about to break down exactly who these new eligible heritage players are. We are going to meticulously analyze the PBA superstars who are ready to carry the offensive load, and we will dissect the tactical brilliance required to merge this unique blend of talent into an unstoppable cohesive unit. The narrative has completely flipped. Gilas is not struggling to find players. Gilas has an embarrassment of riches. Buckle up, because we are diving deep into the reinforced, reloaded, and ridiculously dangerous new iteration of Gilas Pilipinas. To truly comprehend the sheer magnitude of this updated Gilas Pilipinas player pool, we have to meticulously deconstruct the roster architecture, layer by layer, starting with the very foundation of Philippine hoops, the Philippine Basketball Association. For far too long, there has been a lingering, incredibly unfair narrative that the local league was somehow falling behind the pace of the international game. Critics pointed to the faster tempo, the immense size, and the three-point heavy systems of the B-League and the KBL, arguing that the PBA's brand of physical, half-court, import-dominated basketball was detrimental to the national team's development. But what this narrative completely fails to recognize is the pure, unadulterated, pressure cooker environment that the PBA provides for its absolute best players. When you take away the overseas contingent, you are suddenly handing the keys of the national offense back to the homegrown kings, and leading that royal court is none other than the most dominant force to ever set foot on a Philippine basketball court, Junmar Fajardo. We are not just talking about a big man. We are talking about a multi-time, undisputed most valuable player, a colossal figure who possesses an incredibly rare combination of sheer immovable mass and balletic, graceful footwork in the post. In the international game, where size is an absolute premium, Fajardo remains a massive, unsolvable problem for opposing front courts. When he establishes deep position, it fundamentally forces the defense to collapse, triggering a chain reaction that opens up the perimeter for the shooters. Detractors will argue about his foot speed in defending the high pick-and-roll against hyper-athletic European or Oceanic guards, but you absolutely cannot teach his rebounding positioning, his soft touch around the rim, and his veteran savvy. Fajardo anchors this team with a gravitational pull that commands double teams on the block, and in a roster filled with capable shooters, that is an offensive focal point you can build an entire system around. But Fajardo does not stand alone in this homegrown vanguard. Let us talk about the backcourt, the engine room of the Gilas attack. Without the steadying presence of a Dwight Ramos or the explosive downhill attacks of a Renzo Bando, the perimeter responsibilities fall heavily onto the incredibly capable shoulders of the PBA's elite guards. Enter Scotty Thompson. Thompson is not your traditional, prototypical international point guard. He does not possess a lethal, high-volume step-back three-pointer, nor is he going to break his defender down with blinding isolation crossovers. What Scotty Thompson brings is an absolute, relentless, chaotic energy that completely disrupts the flow of the opponent. He is the ultimate stat sheet stuffer, a rebounding savant from the guard position who possesses an uncanny, almost supernatural anticipation for where the ball is going to bounce off the rim. In FIBA play, where every single possession is a grind and extra opportunities are worth their weight in gold, Thompson's ability to secure offensive rebounds against towering forwards is a game-breaking asset. He pushes the pace, he finds the open man in transition with spectacular, no-look flair, and he defends the perimeter with a tenacious, never-back-down mentality. Beside him, you have the pure, unadulterated scoring machine that is CJ Perez. Perez thrives in the open court. He is an absolute blur in transition, capable of finishing through heavy contact at the rim. In the half-court set, when the offense bogs down and the shot clock is dwindling, Perez is the isolation release valve. He has developed a much more consistent mid-range pull-up and a respectable outside shot, making him a multi-level threat that international scouts must heavily prepare for. You pair Thompson's rebounding and playmaking with Perez's relentless downhill attacking, and you have a backcourt dynamic that is aggressively physical and constantly applying pressure to the rim. We must also highlight the immense value of a player like Calvin Oftana. In the modern FIBA game, the prototype of the highly coveted player is the big wing who can stretch the floor, defend multiple positions, and attack closeouts. Oftana fits this description perfectly. He has the size to grapple with international forwards and the incredibly smooth, high-arcing three-point stroke to punish defenses that sag into the paint to double Fajardo. Oftana's growth in the PBA has been spectacular, transitioning from a pure energy guy to a primary offensive option, and that confidence translates perfectly to the international stage. Add to this mix the defensive brilliance and veteran leadership of a Chris Newsom, a player who has proven time and again that he can lock down the opposing team's best perimeter threat while making incredibly sound, low-mistake decisions on offense. Newsom is the connective tissue, the glue guy who ensures the defensive rotations are tight and the offensive sets are executed with precision. Now, let us pivot to the most groundbreaking aspect of this entire situation: the FIBA rule change regarding passport eligibility. The shift from 16 to 18 years old is not merely a bureaucratic footnote, it is a structural revolution for Gilas Pilipinas. The SBP, the Samahang Basketballing Pilipinas, has been aggressively scouting the global diaspora for decades, identifying incredible talents in North America, Europe, and Australia who boast undeniable Filipino heritage. For years, the heartbreaking reality was that many of these players, despite their immense skill and desire to represent the motherland, discovered their roots or initiated the passport process just a fraction too late, perhaps at 16 and a half or 17 years old. Under the old draconian rule, they were permanently classified as naturalized players, forcing them into a brutal, often impossible competition against established, dominant American imports for that single, solitary roster spot. By pushing the threshold to 18, FIBA has magically transformed a massive pool of these players from rotational afterthoughts into core building blocks. We are suddenly looking at a reality where highly touted collegiate stars in the United States, players who have been exposed to elite strength and conditioning programs, advanced tactical coaching, and high-level competition since their early teens, can simply walk onto the Gilas roster as local players. This instantly solves some of the most glaring, historical weaknesses of the Philippine team: perimeter size and consistent, high-volume outside shooting. Imagine injecting a 6'6" sweet shooting wing from a Division I NCAA program directly into the lineup without sacrificing the naturalized big man inside. Imagine bringing in a hyper-athletic, defensively switchable forward who can match the physicality of the Australian or New Zealand squads. These heritage players, who are now legally recognized as locals, bring an entirely different dimension to the team. They bring the modern, positionless basketball philosophy, where everyone on the floor can dribble, pass, and shoot. They bridge the gap between the traditional Philippine style of play and the rapidly evolving, highly skilled global game. The SBP's scouting database, once a source of frustration regarding ineligible players, has suddenly become a treasure map of immediate, unrestricted reinforcements. And speaking of reinforcements, we cannot possibly discuss the strength of a Gilas Pilipinas roster without dedicating a significant portion of our analysis to the naturalized player program, which remains the ultimate equalizer in international competition. Even if you completely remove the overseas professionals, even if you are heavily relying on the PBA core and the newly eligible heritage players, you still have the ultimate trump card waiting in the wings. For Gilas, the gold standard of this program is, and remains, the legendary Justin Brownlee. To call Justin Brownlee a naturalized player almost feels like a profound disservice to what he truly represents to the Philippine basketball community. He is not a mercenary hired for a quick tournament. He is a fully integrated, passionately embraced cultural icon. When Brownlee puts on the Gilas jersey, something magical happens on the floor. He possesses an incredibly rare, almost telepathic understanding of the Filipino style of play. He does not demand the ball in isolation and stall the offense. Instead, he seamlessly weaves himself into the fabric of the team system. He is the ultimate safety net. When the set play breaks down, when the shot clock is flashing red, Brownlee has an uncanny ability to create a high-efficiency shot out of absolutely nothing. His mid-range game is virtually automatic, his three-point shooting in clutch moments is legendary, and his willingness to sacrifice his body on the defensive end sets a tone that the entire roster follows. Having Brownlee on the floor changes everything for the homegrown players. It relieves the immense pressure on Fajardo in the paint, as defenses cannot afford to double down when Brownlee is lurking on the perimeter. It opens up driving lanes for Perez and Thompson, as shot blockers are constantly terrified of leaving Brownlee open for a kick-out three. He is a multiplier. He makes every single player on the floor significantly better simply by his presence. And if the situation requires a different look, perhaps a need for overwhelming rim protection and rebounding rather than perimeter scoring, the program has the flexibility to utilize an Ange Kwame. Kwame offers a completely different dynamic, a massive, shot-altering defensive anchor who thrives in the pick-and-roll and cleans up the offensive glass with relentless hustle. The point is, the naturalized spot is solidified with absolute, top-tier talent, ensuring that Gilas always has an elite focal point to anchor the domestic roster. We must also factor in the coaching brilliance required to orchestrate this specific ensemble of talent. When you do not have the towering length of Kai Sato or the defensive versatility of AJ Edu, the tactical approach must dramatically shift. This is where the genius of the coaching staff, steeped in the strategic depth of the local leagues, comes to the forefront. Without overwhelming size, the defensive philosophy pivots to overwhelming pressure, intelligent switching, and relentless help-side rotations. The team must rely on quickness, anticipating passing lanes, and forcing turnovers to generate easy points in transition. Offensively, a roster heavily laden with PBA stars and newly eligible heritage players will likely lean into highly structured, incredibly disciplined half-court sets. We are talking about beautiful, intricate ball movement, heavily utilizing the pick-and-roll to exploit mismatches, and constantly hunting for the open three-point shooter. The system must be designed to maximize Fajardo's post-gravity while simultaneously creating wide-open looks for Oftana, Newsom, and the newly integrated shooters. It requires a massive amount of unselfishness, a willingness to make the extra pass, and a deep, ingrained trust among the players. Furthermore, we cannot ignore the injection of youth from the collegiate ranks. The UAAP and NCAA in the Philippines continue to produce highly polished, incredibly competitive young talents who are no strangers to the bright lights and the intense pressure of the local fanbase. Players who have dominated the collegiate scene are frequently invited to the Gilas training camps, and in situations where the overseas professionals are unavailable, these young guns are thrust into the spotlight. They bring an infectious energy, a fearless attitude, and a desperate hunger to prove themselves on the international stage. While they might lack the veteran poise of the PBA stars, they make up for it with raw athleticism and a relentless motor. Integrating these young, dynamic players into the system adds a layer of unpredictability to the Gilas attack, forcing opponents to prepare for a multi-generational, highly motivated roster. When you synthesize all of these elements, the immovable force of Fajardo, the relentless energy of Thompson and Perez, the perimeter sharpshooting of Oftana, the structural revolution of the new FIBA passport rules bringing in elite heritage talent, the iconic, game-changing presence of Justin Brownlee, and the strategic brilliance of the coaching staff, the picture becomes crystal clear. The absence of the B-League and KBL stars is undeniably a loss of specific skills and international experience, but it is unequivocally not a death sentence for the team's competitive aspirations. In fact, one could argue that it creates a beautifully cohesive, highly synchronized unit. The players in this iteration of the roster play against each other constantly in the PBA. They know each other's tendencies, they understand each other's strengths and weaknesses, and they share a common, deeply rooted basketball language. There is no need for a lengthy, complex reintegration period that is often required when flying in players from vastly different international systems just days before a tournament. This homegrown and heritage-infused team can hit the ground running, executing complex defensive schemes and offensive sets with the familiarity of a club team. The narrative that Gilas is hopelessly dependent on its overseas diaspora is completely dismantled by the reality of this loaded roster. It proves that the Philippine basketball ecosystem is not a fragile, top-heavy structure, but rather a deep, robust, and incredibly resilient machine capable of absorbing massive absences and still fielding a genuinely terrifying, highly competitive squad. The international community might look at the missing names and underestimate this team, but that is the exact mistake that this Gilas Pilipinas roster is built to aggressively punish. They thrive in the role of the underdog, they feed off the doubt, and they step onto the court with an entire nation of over 100 million passionately screaming fans behind them. As we wrap up this incredibly extensive, deep dive into the resilient and highly fortified state of Gilas Pilipinas, the overarching message should be resoundingly clear to everyone watching. The landscape of international basketball is absolutely brutal. It is a relentless, unforgiving grind of overlapping schedules, logistical nightmares, and constant, unavoidable roster adjustments. Teams that rely solely on a fixed, inflexible starting five are the teams that ultimately crumble when the FIBA windows conflict with professional club commitments. But what we have meticulously uncovered today is that the Philippine national basketball program has evolved far beyond that point of fragility. The breaking news regarding the unavailability of our beloved B-League and KBL superstars initially sounded like a devastating blow, a scenario that would cripple lesser programs. But for Gilas Pilipinas, it merely signaled the activating of a deeply entrenched, incredibly talented contingency plan that is, quite frankly, just as lethal. We have seen how the absolute titans of the Philippine Basketball Association are not just capable fill-ins, but hardened, battle-tested warriors ready to impose their will on the international stage. We have broken down the monumental, game-changing implications of FIBA's decision to raise the passport eligibility age to 18, a bureaucratic victory that essentially kicks down the doors for a massive wave of elite, highly skilled heritage players to instantly elevate the local talent pool. We have celebrated the enduring, magical impact of the naturalized program, heavily anchored by the legendary presence of players who completely embody the Filipino fighting spirit. This is no longer a story about who is missing from the roster. This is a powerful, undeniable testament to who is actually stepping up. It is about the immense pride of the homegrown heroes, the seamless integration of global Filipino talent, and the tactical brilliance required to mold them into a cohesive, unstoppable force. When this specific iteration of Gilas Pilipinas steps onto the hardwood, they carry with them not a sense of depletion, but a massive chip on their shoulder. They carry the weight of a nation that breathes basketball, a fanbase that demands absolute maximum effort on every single possession. To the international opponents analyzing the scouting reports and crossing out the names of the overseas stars, consider this a highly publicized warning. Do not mistake a different-looking Gilas Pilipinas for a weaker Gilas Pilipinas. The faces might change, the specific offensive sets might be slightly adjusted to fit a different personnel, but the sheer heart, the relentless intensity, and the undeniable talent remain exactly the same. The Philippine basketball pipeline is deep, it is overflowing with potential, and it is ready to shock the world once again. Thank you all so much for joining me on this massive, comprehensive journey through the depths of the Gilas Pilipinas roster situation. If you appreciate this level of detailed, uncompromising basketball analysis, if you love deep dives that go far beyond the simple headlines and truly break down the beautiful game, please make sure to smash that like button. It helps the channel immensely and pushes this content out to more passionate fans just like you. Do not forget to hit subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss an update, a breakdown, or a late-night analysis session as we continue to track the incredible journey of our national team. I want to hear from every single one of you down in the comments section below. Who is your absolute X-factor from the PBA core in this upcoming window? Which newly eligible heritage player are you most excited to see put on the national colors? Let's get the debate raging in the comments. Until next time, keep the faith, keep supporting the squad, and as always, Laban Pilipinas.